everyone. Thank you for coming. I see some familiar faces. I see some students that I know. I see you, Ben, waving from the back of the room. It's good to see all of you. This is our 6th Entrepreneurs Roundtable. We launched this series a few years ago, and our objective at that time was to start a conversation on campus and in the community about entrepreneurial leadership. We define entrepreneurship as recognizing an opportunity or a need, and then, in spite of uncertainty and resource scarcity, organizing a response. Entrepreneurs take action. That's the point. They take action. In fact, the word entrepreneur is derived from the French word meaning to act. In our Roundtable series, we have focused on entrepreneurial opportunities as wide-ranging as food products, cheese, if you recall, novelty, promotional items, medical therapeutics, rockets, software companies, and nonprofit organizations. We've asked, what are the challenges entrepreneurs face? What kind of people get involved in launching an entrepreneurial venture? Who steps up and why? Tonight, we turn our spotlight on a sector that dominates Huntsville, technical service companies that are contractors to large federal agencies and subcontractors to large OEMs. After introducing our distinguished panelists tonight, I will ask a series of questions, and then I'll open things up to all of you. So please be thinking about your questions as we move through the evening. Our first panelist is Chris McGuire. Ms. McGuire is the founder and CEO of Victory Solutions. She launched Victory Solutions in 2006 to provide a wide range of aerospace products and engineering technical services to the Department of Defense, NASA, and to commercial customers. Ms. McGuire was one of the first women assigned to the Air Force Special Weapons Center's maintenance squadron at Kirtland Air Force Base during the Vietnam War. It is with this experience in mind that Ms. McGuire initiated a research and development effort to design a portable system to defend the warfighter against small rocket threats. Victory Solutions has been successful, expanding into 6 states, including opening a light manufacturing and prototyping facility in Charleston, South Carolina just recently. Victory Solutions received the 2012 Boeing Performance Excellence Award as a gold-level supplier. Keep in mind, Boeing has over 23,000 suppliers worldwide, and Victory was one of only 153 Boeing suppliers to achieve this level of recognition. Victory was also awarded the next year the Boeing Supplier of the Year Award, one of 17 out of that same 23,000 base. Ms. McGuire has led Victory through several years of successful growth and expansion, and has also given back to the community by helping to raise millions of dollars for nonprofits in the community. Would you join me in welcoming Ms. McGuire? Our next panelist is Michael J. Durant. Mike Durant. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Pinnacle Solutions Incorporated, an engineering and services company. Pinnacle Solutions was founded in 2008 to provide high-quality training systems and services and engineering and logistics support analysis. In 2012, a mere 4 years later, Pinnacle was ranked 88th in the country by Inc. magazine's list of fastest-growing companies in the country, and was recognized again for spectacular growth in 2013. Pinnacle is also on the list of top 100 government service companies and is 12th on the list of top 100 Alabama companies. If you watch documentaries on the History Channel, or you've heard of a book or a movie called Black Hawk Down, the name Michael Durant may be familiar to you. Mr. Durant was the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter that was shot down in Somalia. His New York Times best-selling account of this story of heroism and chaos is titled In the Company of Heroes. In addition to being a decorated veteran with more recognitions and honors than I can list, he is also an award-winning business leader. He was recognized in 2013 by the National Veteran-Owned Business Association as the Vetrapreneur of the Year. Please join me in welcoming Mike Durant. You may notice in your program and in the announcements about this that there was a third panelist who was scheduled to be with us this evening. Before we get started, I would like to read his bio because I want you to know about him, and then we'll tell you why he's not here. He's sort of busy today. His name is Clayton Henchman. He is the founder, president, and CEO of USI, Universal Solutions International, an expert technology and engineering solutions provider. USI currently serves various federal programs, several large defense and technology firms, multiple nonprofit organizations, and the local Huntsville City Schools Information Technology Department. Mr. Henchman served in the U.S. Army as an infantry officer. He retired after sustaining wounds from an improvised explosive attack during a night raid in Iraq. Before founding USI, he worked for the Joint IED Defeat Organization and with other nonprofits in Washington, D.C. to improve compensation and benefits for active duty service members. He's an honor graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School and a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point with a master's degree from Georgetown University. His bio also says that he has one child, and we anticipate that by the end of today he will have two. So he is busy today, and we all understand why he's not here. And I know that a little later, Chris had some things she wanted to say about him, but we're sorry he's not here, but we certainly understand why. So I want to start with our panelists by first asking if each of you could sort of tell me a little bit more about your company. What specifically does it do? Who specifically are the customers? And what is the value created? Why does your customer buy from you? And again, I'd mentioned to you earlier, we don't know government contracting, so we won't know the acronyms, and we're going to rely on you to explain things for us in kind of simple terms, if you would. Michael, would you start for us?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Pinnacle Solutions is focused in three primary areas. The core, or where we started the company, was focused on the training development side, which is anything from computer-based training, something that you can either download on the internet or run on a CD, on your PC, iPad, whatever, a lot of it is cross-platform, all the way up to complex hardware-in-the-loop type devices for maintenance training or pilot training. You're probably familiar with the term flight simulators. We haven't built a flight simulator. It takes several years to grow into a capability like that, but we've modified them and we've built devices that are slightly lower fidelity than a full-up flight simulator. So everything in that spectrum falls into that first category that we call training development. The second area is services, and a lot of different capabilities in that particular area. Again, we started out providing engineering services, which is people on site, typically supporting government customers. But it evolved into a lot of different other areas. Currently we have pilots flying as contractors for the government. We have pilots in the UK flying the CV-22 tilt rotor. We have Apache pilots and Black Hawk pilots in Taiwan flying to help train the Taiwan Army. We have Bell 412 pilots in Saudi Arabia flying in support of the Royal Saudi Air Force. We have let's see, we've had Mike model pilots flying in support of the U.S. Army until just recently when our contract ended. And then the last piece of that services, or the last two pieces, we've got simulator technicians. You know, these simulators, once they're fielded, they're pretty high fidelity devices that involve a lot of technology, and it requires a team dedicated to keep them operational. So we've got a team up at Fort Campbell supporting 5 flight simulators up there, providing the maintenance. And then we won a contract this year with NASA down at Stennis Space Center supporting program control activities, which is basically helping the NASA government customer with their monitoring of all the activities that go on at Stennis. So we'll help them do the reports and do the budget analysis and do some of the program planning and scheduling that complements their government, their NASA government resources with some additional contractors. And then the third area is, we call it logistics support analysis and services, but if you have a military background, you probably know it as technical publications. It's really evolved over the years. 10, 15 years ago, technical publications would have been a library of paper documents. Today, most of it is at least digital, and a lot of it has in fact evolved and migrated to being interactive electronic technical manuals. So it's no longer just a PDF, but it is in some cases a video or an animation that a maintainer or an operator can reference either while they're conducting maintenance on an aircraft or operating the machine, to keep them either proficient or to help them actually do their day-to-day tasks. And we write manuals for ground vehicles, helicopters, airplanes, and anything in between.
Wow, I think you about covered mine too.
And it sounds like your customer every time is a government. Is that
not all the time.
Not all the time?
We've had a few commercial contracts. We did one in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, a couple of years ago for a company there called Mubadala. And that was really, again, leveraging our simulator expertise, but it was a commercial activity. We've supported Indra, which is a large simulator manufacturer headquartered in Spain, sold them some technology and some equipment to go on some of their simulators. And we have actually a continuing relationship now with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. We won a contract there 2 years ago. One of Embry-Riddle's efforts is, like many universities, is to expand beyond the brick and mortar capability to provide a true learning capability that is available via the internet no matter where you are. And really, I think everyone shares the goal of having something beyond PowerPoint or something beyond an instructor providing some kind of a lecture that you just happen to watch on your computer. So what we're developing for Embry-Riddle are interactive labs. The biggest issue with allowing people to take some college courses is if it involves a lab, they can't take it if they're in Afghanistan. So what we've done is create 3D virtual labs that can be downloaded for use on your iPad or your PC, and then they can take that course and they do their homework assignments, their lab assignment, using this interactive 3D capability. And we've built and delivered one that's in use, and we're working on the second one now.
That's very interesting. We might want to have a conversation.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great.
Okay, great. And Chris?
Wow, I don't know how to follow that. Well, anyway, Victory Solutions does engineering support for NASA. We work as programmatics. We have a contract that works with SLS, doing a lot of the programmatics configuration management and cost estimating that Marshall does for the program. We also work with a lot of the large OEMs such as Boeing, hence the Supplier of the Year, on the ground-based mid-course defense systems. And we have people that work at Fort Greely, California, Colorado Springs, Washington, and of course Alabama. We also work with we have a prototyping and light manufacturing facility we started about 3 years ago, and hopefully in support of the 787 commercial airliner that Boeing's building composite parts, and we do design to build for that. We also do radar testing, and we have an anechoic chamber in South Carolina that we support for the Navy and DoD. We do IT work with DoD with Lockheed Martin as a sub on high performance computing at the 4 shared resource centers throughout the country, including Maui. And one of the other things that we did that was really interesting when we started our company, and the reason I kind of started the company was because I always wanted to be able to reach out and help the veterans or the soldiers, warfighter out in the field, to be able to touch and do something to really save lives. And we developed a cradle-to-grave technology to protect the vehicles against RPG fire against the vehicles. And rocket-propelled grenade, right. So the guys got to play with a lot of RPGs to be able to, test this type of technology. It was very successful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So you're describing in both cases organizations, companies that have extensive product lines. But tell me how you started. When did you first think about starting a business? How did that idea come to you to begin with? Chris, do you want to answer that first?
Well, okay, yeah, it's a little strange. I never really thought I wanted to do a business because I was very happy being a mom. My husband was an airline pilot and flew the Orient for a commercial airliner. So I stayed home and took care of the girls, and I did a lot of fundraising to kind of keep myself busy when they were in school. I was very successful at raising money for a lot of nonprofit. When my kids decided to go to Alabama, I was living in Texas at the time, and I moved here to be near them and got involved with fundraising for different causes and was pretty successful with that. And one of the things I realized is most of the money is in DC. So I got to kind of take care of my habit, which was, kind of going shopping and eating out and kind of being outside of a small area, because I live in Guntersville, so that was very, very small from where I moved from Dallas. And I decided that these local businessmen here in Huntsville, where I was doing my fundraising, because there's not that many, there's only 7,000 people in Guntersville, Alabama, compared to Huntsville, which has 340 small businesses and the large businesses. And I thought, wow, what a gold mine for fundraising. I was very successful in raising millions of dollars for this old armory in Guntersville to turn it into a cultural arts center. And through that, these local businessmen saw that I had a lot of, I don't know what they would really, I can't really say what it was, but I had it. And they thought I should really start my own business. And that was the furthest thing from my mind, because I was an art major and a mom, and I really didn't even know where NASA was on the Arsenal. So how could I do business with the government when I really didn't have that background or understanding of how to even do a proposal? And so a couple of the men thought, we'll go ahead and mentor you. And I thought, yeah, well, I kind of like my life the way it is. So I decided that the only way I would even consider doing this is if I did my own business plan, which I did. And I thought, that was a really good 6-month learning curve for me. It gave me something to do and I really didn't want to do this because it looked like it would be a lot of work on the plan. So I decided that if I would take the plan to the bank, they would kind of get off my case about starting my business. And I went to a bank here in town that's very not small business friendly, because they don't have a reputation for really loaning small businesses money. And I thought they'd turn me down and I'd be fine. I'd done my job as like I said I would do. So I went to this bank and I gave them my plan and they gave it back to me. And I thought, that's okay, no problem, I'm fine with that. And they said, no, we're gonna up it because you forgot to estimate your taxes. And I thought, I have to pay taxes? I'm really in trouble. So I really didn't know anything. So if anybody's out there that thinks they can't do this, trust me, I'm testimony that you can. And so they gave me the loan, which was a large amount of money, on a signature. And I thought, oh my gosh. So you ever wonder what that dog felt like when he caught that car? I felt like I caught the car, and I needed to do something with it. And the first thing I thought I need to do is hire a technical person, because I don't know all this engineering language. And next thing you know, I'm in business. And next thing you know, I'm sitting here. So don't think you can't do it.
So when we asked the question, how did the idea come to you?
Oh.
It did not come to you.
It didn't
Someone
come
brought
to me.
The idea to you.
It was, yeah.
That's great.
Right.
Mike, what about you? What's your origination story?
Well, I guess, when you asked me this question earlier, I thought, no, I'm probably not an entrepreneur necessarily as I look at myself. But then I began to think about the first time I guess I ever took a swing at the ball that was a little bit unusual from what my day-to-day life was. I was already a pilot, and I decided to build houses on the side back up in Clarksville, which is right outside of Fort Campbell. And I did it twice, and it worked out pretty well. And you learn a lot, you really do. I mean, you got to understand project management, you got to understand budgets, you got to understand that people are not going to show up to do the roof when you want them to do the roof, and all those kind of things. And oddly enough, when I was doing the second one, we deployed to Somalia. And in the middle of framing, I find myself in combat for 3 months. And the internet really didn't exist back then, if you don't remember what the timing was. But we got to send an email from Somalia, and it was the first email I ever sent. Yeah. And instead of, I miss you and all of that, I sent, hey, make sure you call the framer, and sent the instructions about how to keep the house moving forward. So I guess thinking about that whole part of my life and getting involved in that, I guess maybe I have sort of stepped outside the bounds a little bit from time to time. But the real driver for me with starting Pinnacle was when I came to Huntsville, I worked for a fantastic small business. Everything about that company was great. And I was asked to open the office here for the company. The company was actually headquartered in Herndon, Virginia. But it being the guy on point here in Huntsville, I got to interact a lot with the senior folks up in Herndon and some of the other sites. And everything about that company was good. And unfortunately, we were bought after I worked for them for about 5 years. And nothing against large businesses in general, because we have a lot of primes who are large businesses, and I don't want to offend them. But culturally, I'm a better fit for a small business. I mean, we're all different, and you got to understand where do you fit well. And I fit better in a small business environment. I think that comes from my special operations background, where you have a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom, a lot of latitude, a lot of authority, and you kind of like to do things on your own and not stay in the lane, you know. And if you're in a large business, you are more inclined to have to stay in your lane. So I found that I didn't like it, even though when the large business came in, they said, we're going to keep the culture the same, we're going to keep the leadership the same. Over time, you just can't do that. And it became, it wasn't fun anymore. And I stuck it out for about 3 years, and then I thought, you know what? I would really like to bring that old small business back to life. And our business plan, if I were to sum it up in one statement, was we're going to bring the band back together. And that was really what, you know, high level, what we wanted to do is try to bring that culture back, bring that business model back. And I think in a lot of ways we have. And that's probably what I'm proud of most, is that I think when our employees look at the kind of environment we've created, it is very similar to that same environment. And in fact, I often ask myself when faced with difficult decisions, you know, what would Tony do? He was the CEO of that company, and I have a lot of respect for him, and he taught me a lot about how to treat people, how to make decisions, and how to be a good business person.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, and kind of building on some of what you're saying about people who influenced you, did you have business partners? Did either of you, when you first started out, actually have in the business you're in now, did you have a business partner, or did you bring on a business partner later? What about you, Chris?
I had a business partner because they really wanted me to start this business. He was more of an advisor than a partner. So he kind of knew where all the bodies were buried in town, which I thought was very nice, because you need to know this stuff when you start this kind of company. It kind of keeps you out of trouble. And it's nice to have a senior person that can kind of tell, you know, you can kind of brainstorm with. It makes it very nice. It's very important.
Do you have any lessons about business partners? Have you had any bad, I mean, you don't mention names, but have you had any bad experiences with business partners? I'm curious,
None.
Chris.
None.
Oh, that's good. That's very
you
good.
have to go in trust.
Good. And what about you, Mike? Did you have partners, business partners?
Yeah, I had one. We had worked together for several years, and you know, I was really stepping out in the unknown, as were you. I mean, I kind of, you know, read up on how to write a business plan, but in terms of some of the specifics about how do you really get a business off the ground, it was complete unknown for me. So I guess there's always a little bit less fear if you can share that with someone else and both your houses are on the note, you know, instead of just yours. But I approached him about doing this, and he was a pretty easy sell. His wife was not quite so easy to sell, but I was able to do that, and we started the business. Just recently decided to buy him out and be the sole owner. So I am the paperwork's not final, but very close to being final. Where I'll be the sole owner of Pinnacle. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. Did you have any other mentors who assisted you? People that weren't directly involved in the business, but that gave you counsel or guidance at any different point in time?
Me? Well, actually, you know, you just said you got rid of, well, you didn't get rid of, but you kind of, that's the wrong word. Well, you just, well, in other words, I just...
They're changing their professional
Yeah, I just bought out my business partner this week as well. So.
Well, that's a weird coincidence. Yeah.
That's very coincidental,
Yeah.
yes. Because you reach a certain point where they're kind of getting tired of the business, and you're at this point now that you can do that. And now I'm on my own. But I have wonderful people that support me, so I'm very comfortable where I'm at without the senior leadership that he provided. What was the question?
It was mentoring. Just, you know, have you had good mentors?
Oh, yes, and that's so important. And I still have good mentoring. but in a different way now, through other businesses, and DoD, Department of Defense, also provides mentoring for small businesses. There's a lot of different opportunities that small businesses could look into if they decide to start a business like this, because the government recognizes it takes more than just, well, some people get really lucky, but there's all kinds of groups out there that you can use for mentoring or just business plans. There's just all kinds of available stuff out on the net. And I was very fortunate that we received a mentorship with Boeing.
Yeah.
And so that's been going very well.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That was something I was hoping you would.
It's a Department of Defense mentor-protege relationship, and the large company finds a small minority, or I guess it would be more of a minority business, a woman-owned, 8A, Hub Zone, service-disabled, veteran-owned company, and they mentor them for 3 years. This is under the DoD one, and the government pays them to mentor you, and it's kind of like, what are all the things you want to accomplish in these 3 years? And you make out like a wish list, and then you kind of start working that up. And in my case with Boeing, it's been very, very, very good. They have not only mentored me business-wise, but they have also taught us how to make composite parts the Boeing way. There's a way you do things. And so we'll be able to apply that to other commercial applications, even once the relationship is over, just continue growing that piece of the business. And it's just been a great, if anyone can get a mentorship like that, it's invaluable. It's just so good, but you have to work it. It's constant work, because everybody's busy, so you have to stay on top of it. You have to be flexible, and you have to understand what you want to get out of the program. And everything has to be in writing.
Yeah.
By both parties.
That's interesting. Mike, what about you? Any mentors who've assisted you outside of your partner?
Well, I think what has helped me a lot is having spent 22 years in the military, because I just work for some fantastic leaders, and a lot of times I will try to think back about, again, what would one of those great leaders do in this situation, and I think a lot of times it comes down to your values and your culture, always going back to that. It's got to matter, when you write it or when you create it, really put a lot of thought into that, because at least for me, a lot of the tough decisions always go back to, what do we say our core values are, and we tie the tough decisions to those core values. So that has been of tremendous value to me, to have spent all those years working for all those great people. And then, as I just mentioned, I spent that 5 years working for that small business, and not just the CEO, Tony, but his engineering director partner and the finance folks, and just all the people that I had the opportunity to interact with really taught me a lot about how to run a business the right way. And then obviously when we did start the company, I did consult with Tony and got his advice early on, but since then there's not really been a ton of mentorship. Okay. And we got some great help from organizations like the WBCNA. Did I say that acronym correctly?
Yes.
Women's Business Council of North Alabama.
Yes.
Did I get that right? Yeah. And there are, it's similar to what Chris was talking about. These are organizations that are out there to help startups, and you don't have to be a woman-owned business. They'll help you no matter who you are. UAH has programs to help small businesses. I mean, there are a variety of resources that you can go out to that, although they're organizations, they can still function as mentors and help you with those early challenges that you're sure to encounter, and then really throughout the life cycle of your business. And then I would say, from the final mentorship would probably be some of the large business partners that we work with. Certainly giving us the opportunity to provide products and services to them has helped us tremendously, and you learn from them as well.
Well, I'm curious about the process of identifying a new opportunity. So both of you have described, over time, your companies are relatively young, right? Both of them, relatively young. And yet over time, you have added different entire categories of products and services that you offer. How did the process work inside the company of determining that there was a new opportunity? Did that come to you from outside? Did it come from inside? Because you're talking about, different organizations, different states, different countries. How does that work inside? Chris, you want to?
That's the best part about owning a small business, actually. I find it very challenging and very exciting to be able to walk into the office one day and decide that you want to build something, develop a technology. And I don't know, it just kind of comes to you. I'm always thinking about, I'm always thinking about ways that you can make things better. And you can look around the government and see that, if there's just a technology out there that you can probably understand and get your arms around, you can always find people to help you, because this is a town that is just overflowing with, people that are just so much smarter than I am, that know what they're doing. And, we are so lucky to have that here. But it's just, I don't know, we had an opportunity to come to us, and I won't mention any names, but it's a totally different area from us, and I'm so interested in doing this because it's diversifying the company, and you see we are diversified like in 3 different areas, and I just want to keep diversifying because I never want to be all my eggs in one basket. Because that's a very dangerous place to be as a small business, because you never know when that contract will be canceled or in, so you're constantly looking for new ways to branch out and do other things. And so it's important to take some of that investment money and take the risk to develop a technology. Even if it doesn't work, it always opens other doors for you. Even though that technology, well, we don't need it anymore, but you know what? I met so-and-so, and now I can go and do this. So it's a constant evolving process.
Okay, Mike, would you speak to that? Where the new ideas, the new opportunities came from? Did you initiate them, come up with it sitting at home and take it out to the company, or did someone come to the company with an opportunity? How did it work?
So it's really all of the above.
Okay.
And I think the main thing is, first of all, starting or running a business takes a bit of courage. I mean, you can't be timid. You've got to be able to, I compare it to being a quarterback. I mean, you think about the quarterback, if you sat there in the pocket and never threw the ball, you wouldn't have a very powerful offense. I mean, you've got to have the courage to throw the ball, and you got to know when to throw the ball. And that's really the toughest thing, is when do you pull the trigger and when do you not pull the trigger? And the successful companies and the successful quarterbacks pull the trigger and complete the pass more often than they are intercepted. But as Chris alluded to, every once in a while you throw an interception, and you can't let it discourage you, because that happens to everyone. No one is perfect. You make mistakes. But in terms of the source of all these ideas, we're very process oriented. That's one of the things I'm proud of. We are ISO 9001, and we are also CMI level 3 for software development. So we are very, very, and we've been CMI level 3 for 3 years. So we were only a 3-year-old company when we put those processes in place. And those processes go across all aspects of the company, and one of those obviously is new business. And new business, to give you some sense of how many things are going on in that area, we track all opportunities that have any chance whatsoever of surviving in our process with a number. And I think I just assigned number 397 this week. So it just gives you some sense of scale that we've tracked in 6 years 397 different opportunities. And some of them die pretty quickly, but some obviously turn into fairly significant things. Those opportunities come from all sorts of sources. There are products out there. Deltek has a product called GovWin, which you can go on. I'm on there every day and looking at either something that's in my lane or something in a lane I want to expand into, and gives you a lot of business analysis about the current contracts, when that thing's going to be recompeted, who the opponents might be. So there are, again, resources like that can help you make those decisions about what you pursue. There's FedBizOps that many of you in business have heard of. The thing about FedBizOps, though, is by the time you see it on FedBizOps, somebody's already worked this opportunity pretty hard, and you're a little bit behind the power curve. So those two are resources that are out there, but you got to understand what their limitations are. There's no substitute for going out there and just going to trade shows and meeting with customers and making sure potential new customers understand your capabilities, either at small business events where there's matchmaking going on, or today the Army Aviation Association had the Cribbins Product Support Symposium. You go down there, you can meet all your Army aviation customers in one place in one day. So all of those things combined. We also have what we call an innovation initiative within the company, where within our SharePoint database we have a location where people can submit ideas, and they're everything from making just small things better to what we call big ideas, things that will involve an investment for the company. And if we push the investment or the idea through the gate review process and it gets to where we actually move forward with it, that employee is rewarded monetarily, and a sense of pride for actually having contributed the idea, but also rewarded monetarily. But the big game changers, though, going to sort of summarize all that, have come almost out of left field, where they were not necessarily things we were looking for, but we saw an opportunity, and going back to the quarterback analogy, we threw the ball, and we got into areas that we were not in before. And one of those was tech pubs. I mean, we didn't see ourselves as a tech pubs company, but we got a call from a large OEM that said, hey, we just want a contract. We need a small business to take this on. Are you interested? There were 12 companies competing. We got very aggressive on our pricing, and we won. And it's turned into the largest activity we've ever done as a company, and we've been doing it for 4 years now. Same thing happened this year with a NASA contract. We didn't really think NASA was a viable customer for us yet, because we didn't have anybody that understood them, and they just, we're an Army aviation company primarily, so NASA's a bit of a stretch, but there was an opportunity to compete on something, and we did, and we won, and now it's the largest contract that we have. So it's that whole idea of seizing the moment and not being afraid to go try something that's just a little bit different can really make those game-changing opportunities come to life.
It sounds like for both of you, you take one step, that opens a door to more opportunities, and you can pursue the ones that fit best. I suspect there's some you've had to turn down, strategic decisions to turn some down.
Well, that's the other thing that I think a lot of people struggle with as a small, is they kind of want to chase everything. Exactly. And you can't. I mean, you are resource constrained. And even if you cut that down in half, you're still going to overcommit yourself. And what you have to do is focus on the things you have a good shot at winning, and do a 110% effort on those, and not dilute your efforts into doing a B product across too many. Yeah.
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what about this rapid growth you've experienced? I feel like I understand how you identify opportunities and pursue them. But in order to respond to those, once you win that opportunity, you have to scale up. You have to scale up with people. You have to scale up with resources to deliver on this opportunity. How has that worked for you over the last few years as you've been growing so rapidly? Have you had difficulty, challenges, finding people with the right talents, recruiting people to join your organizations? Any limitations like that? Any concerns that you've had as you face rapid growth? What about you, Chris?
Actually, no, we haven't. I think word gets around pretty fast in Huntsville because it's a small community, and if you're not a very strong or a very good company, people hear about it. We have people that actually want to come to work for us, which I'm very honored by that, because it means that we're doing a good job. And I've never had a problem really finding anybody. We've had pretty good employee retention over the last 7 years. The only people we've ever gotten rid of is the people we want to get rid of, and that's been a handful of them. But usually it's pretty good, and we usually have a culture that we like to hire to. And because I'm not a government person, or in that type of I wasn't raised in that type of environment. I'm kind of still a mom, I think, because I love everybody, and we give a lot of hugs, and we have a very easy culture. It's a kind of laid back. It's not in your face military type company. It's just a good company that does good work, and we treat our people well. We reward them for a lot of the same things that Mike talks about, and it just seems to work. And And if you interview people, we have a very stringent interviewing process. It goes on for days, and so we really get to know a lot about the person, and you can tell pretty quickly if they're going to fit in your culture or not. And the only problem is when you inherit a contract, or you win a contract that already has people on board, you're kind of inheriting other people's people, and somehow things just work out that by the time the year is over, you've already replaced the people that don't fit into your culture. Either they leave or you somehow they're just not there anymore, and you get to hire people that fit into this culture that you have. And it's, you know, we have a gold mine here, so I haven't had any problems, and even in other states, none.
Okay. I'm really intrigued by the phrase you used repeatedly about hiring to fit the culture and maintaining the culture, and I want to come back to that in a minute. But Mike, what about you? With the extraordinary growth that you've experienced, have you had any challenges with bringing on qualified people that fit with the pace and direction you're trying to accomplish?
Well, first, I would say all the same things that Chris said, but I'm not going to cop out with that response. But I'm glad you said it at the end, because really the biggest challenge we have faced is on incumbent contracts, because that's exactly what happens. And it's not a criticism of any of the contracts that we've won, but they do come from a different background. They've worked for a different company before that had just a different way of doing business, and sometimes there's a little bit of a challenge merging that into the way we operate and function. And it does work itself out over time, and we found that same thing. But initially, there can be a few issues early on. It's funny, I'm sure you've all heard of USAA. They're a big insurance company that has suddenly started advertising in the last year and a half, and most of us who are in the military knew about them all along. But I was out there and talking to their leadership, and one of the things they do is if they open up a new office somewhere or acquire a company, they immediately change out the leadership no matter what, whether it's good or not. And then they take people from San Antonio and put them in place. And their whole idea is to make sure that USAA culture is growing from day one. They don't want to wait, which, as a large business, they can do that. We don't have the capacity to do that. But so it just shows that no matter how big you are, it's still the same challenge. You've got to figure out how to take those people who operated in a different environment and now integrate them into yours. We've never had any big issues, but there certainly are some. The other thing that we have really slowed down on hiring, I'm not sure if you've ever heard this phrase before, but it is absolutely dead on target, and it's hire slow, fire fast. I mean, the last thing you want to do is rush into a hiring because you got a slot to fill. In fact, we don't even call it filling a slot. I don't want our HR guy even saying that phrase. I want him to say, we're finding the right person. It's just a mindset. You don't want to, we just want a contract, has 5 positions on it, we got to get them filled or we can't start billing the customer. But the last thing you want to do is just hire anybody. You got to find the right person. And then on the flip side, the fire fast is if you make a mistake and you don't bring the right person in, you got to figure out how to either give them an opportunity to become the right person, which is always the first step. But if over time they just can't do it, you got to make sure that you don't allow them to stay in the organization longer than they should, because it starts to affect the culture if you got people there that aren't a fit or don't perform.
That's right. And Jack Welch, I think most people know Jack Welch is sort of the legendary CEO for decades at General Electric, and his position was very firm that he would keep someone who had performance problems if they fit the culture, but a superstar that did not fit the culture, he would ease them out. It was always about, you could improve someone's performance if you work with them, but if they don't fit the culture, they need to go. You can't change that.
I just want to throw one more thing out there that we've started to do recently, actually, because we're so focused on this particular aspect of it, because it becomes a bigger challenge as you get bigger, because now you're bringing more people in, and again, the last thing you want to do is bring the wrong people in. So we've actually started doing personality profiles on key people. And I was a little skeptical of that at first, because I've never been a big believer in it, and I hope I'm not offending anyone with that, but yeah, but let me tell you, it's worked out pretty well. It is pegged most people that we have taken the time to do it on, and We think it's certainly the right thing to do. Maybe not for every employee, but for key people, managers, or key department leads, it's worth taking the time to do that.
We tell our students that we're seeing, I mean, it's been the case for a long time now, that we see more and more evidence that that is the method that firms will use, businesses will use to make a hiring decision. They'll test for a lot of different things before the fact. Now, let me ask this a philosophical question as a follow-up to that, though. Is your goal with that testing to have people that are similar, or do you use that to have people who are different?
Well, you do want some diversity. I mean, you don't want
everyone thinking exactly the
right.
same.
You don't want minions, I guess.
Yes.
I have kids, so I wouldn't have seen that movie otherwise. No, it's a great movie. One of my favorite movies, actually. So you do want diversity, but again, I think you've heard it from both of us. Culture, I don't want to say it's necessarily king, but it is really, really important. And you've got to have people that have similar values. It doesn't mean, you're certainly not discriminating. It's none of the bad stuff. You're trying to find someone who thinks in a way that will blend well with the organization. That's the goal. Hard to do, but that's the goal. There's a great book I read called Who, and if you're really interested in at least this person's perspective on hiring and how to do interviews. I mean, we were doing after I read this book, I came in and I couldn't wait to come to work because I said, we are screwing these interviews up so bad. I mean, he calls this thing the voodoo method, where everybody says, I really felt good about that person. We got good. I mean, that's all garbage. I mean, you're making a personality assessment in 45 minutes that you just can't do. I mean, you absolutely can't do it. And he proves how that is not a method you want to use to try to decide whether or not this person's a fit, because people are, I'm not saying they're acting, but it's a job interview, so they're going to try to behave a certain way, and in 45 minutes you can't make a snap decision like that. So we fixed all that, and we use slightly different methods now versus the handshake felt good method.
Yeah. Okay. Well, did everybody hear all of that? That's the tip. That's
Who?
the tip for the
Just go find the book Who. It's easy to remember.
Exactly. That sounds great. So if we look back over for both of you, it's in the 6 to 8 year time frame, what have been the low points and your greatest challenges? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Chris, you want to think about that?
Well, I guess the greatest challenge is when you start a business like this, you always are concerned about payroll and being able to pay the people that do such a good job for you. And I know there's things as banks and stuff, but banks are funny. They like to come see you when you don't need the money. But if you do need the money, you can't ever get a hold of them. So that to me was always my biggest fear, is what happens if, you hear these stories about how some of these the government doesn't pay sometimes, or the government goes bankrupt, and now you have all this, backlog of payroll to pay. And that's probably the worst thing in the business that's really kept me up at night. Just because I would never want to not be able to pay someone, to feed their family or something. That would be horrible. And we've been very, very fortunate to have a good banker. And I think that is, besides a business plan, that's probably the next thing you need to do is, if you start a business like this, is to get the best banker, one that you really understand each other, on board, because they'll go through the ups and downs with you, and they'll be there to take care of you if they know you're a good company and you're doing the right things. I find it very comforting to have a good banker, someone I can pick up the phone and call, and they'll call me right back if I have a challenge. And I've been very blessed to say that we haven't had these challenges. Even when the government shut down, we had just won a prime contract at NASA. And our people went to work for 4 hours that day, and they shut the government down, and they were out of work. And now I had I guess it was 80 or 90 people that, I'm responsible for, and they're under my company. And I need to figure out what's going to happen now. I mean, the government is shut down, and I could tell you exactly how long to the second the government was shut down, because I counted every minute of that time. And we were very fortunate at the end of the 17 days and 4 hours and whatever, they went back to work, and we were able to pay them the back pay. That was I had grown men cry. And I tell you, it makes you feel very humble to be able to do that for somebody and pay people that never think they're going to get paid for the whole month. They're going to lose a month. What do? They have a mortgage. And our kids that are in college or anything, you know, to miss a paycheck is devastating. And to be able to step out and say, no, you will be paid, and I will take my chances with the government. What a way to start a new contract and have new people on board to know what kind of company, what your company is made of. Then that opportunity was great for us.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. What about you? Greatest challenges, Mike?
Well, I was going to answer the low point
Low points,
part.
okay,
It comes
low
once a year when we pay the taxes.
Oh, yeah. That's brutal, isn't it?
That's terrible.
It's brutal.
Actually, it comes every month also when you pay the health care. I mean, that is the most sobering numbers that I can even begin to describe. Is, you know it's there, but when you actually see how big it is, it's I don't know how we stay afloat, but we do, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be paying taxes. There haven't been a lot of low points. The only other thing, I guess, would be losing proposals. You know, you literally cannot win them all. There is not a company out there that wins them all. But there's always that really sick feeling in your stomach that, you know, you just didn't hit the mark, whether it was for price or however you wrote your technical. And those are big disappointments. I mean, they really are, especially. We don't ever get to the point where we say, you know, we've got this, you know, but you feel I'm 60% confident or whatever, and when they're fairly big and you don't win them, that's a pretty big letdown. And I guess it's offset by the ones that you win, but I sure would like to skip over all the losses. Yeah.
And I'm not a good loser either.
No,
I don't think entrepreneurs are. I don't think it's in the personality.
It's bad.
Well, what about the high points? The biggest rewards, the days when you thought this is perfect, this was a great day. What about you, Chris, on that one?
Well, I just went through that. This was probably our most successful year, and so we got to give bonuses out to everyone in the company. And I went through the whole process, and there's nothing that makes me feel better than giving money away. And so
unless it's to insurance and taxes, right?
Yeah, I feel the same way Mike does about the taxes and the insurance. But you know, you are making money, so you must be able to pay it. And so when we were able to pay everybody a bonus this year, that was the greatest feeling I've ever had. And we haven't told our people yet, so y'all don't say anything. Okay. It's a Christmas surprise. We're going to do it before Christmas.
That's right. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What about you, Mike? The highest points?
You know, it's not some monumental thing. It's I guess just a bunch of small things. To me, integrity is absolutely non-negotiable, and we have submitted ourselves as a company for best places to work, and it's one of the categories that the employees grade the company on is senior management integrity, basically, and trust. And every year it's been pretty much a 10. So I think that, to me, knowing that the employees see that and it's real from their perspective, that means a lot to me.
That's fantastic.
And a couple of those wins.
And if you
felt
gave them
pretty good,
bonuses, they'd give you a 12.
That's right. That's great. Now, in the early days, I'm curious how you defined success, and then, you know, today, how do you define success? How has it changed over time? And I mean for the company, not for you personally necessarily, but for the company. How did you define success? Mike, you want to start with that one this
Sure.
time?
Well, I think early on it's defined in your business plan, or it's supposed to be. So we had some pretty cut and dry parameters in our business plan about how quickly we wanted to get a contract and how much revenue in the first year and those sort of things. And we actually did meet all those. And a little bit of good luck there. I mean, let's face it, no matter what you do in life, luck is involved. And we had some good luck. So a lot of credit to that. Today, many of the same metrics, they're just different numbers, obviously. So we're looking for revenue growth. We're looking for employee retention. Like you, it's one of the numbers that we're most proud of. It's pretty high. We're looking for customer satisfaction. You know, as you grow, I think one of the things that you can lose focus on is what got you there, and you start to try to chase bigger opportunities to keep growing, and you forget about the work you already have, and we start just about every meeting we have these days with, in big bold print, focus on the customers we already have. That's whether it's a new business meeting or not, we try to focus on that. So we want our customers to be satisfied and not want to look anywhere else. I think that, that's one of our primary goals. We are their first choice no matter what it is they need to do. And then I would say, overall employee satisfaction. I mean, we want people to enjoy working for this company, and I think they do, and it's a big focus of ours. And if we ever get any hint that there's something we can tweak, then it becomes important to us to tweak it.
Great. Chris, what about you?
I agree with Mike on all those points too, but I think for Victory Solutions, after we were in business about, I guess, 5 years, I can't remember, the awards that the customer gives out to their top suppliers, I never realized how important those were. And when we received the Boeing Supplier of the Year award, I really I thought, well, that's great. Of course we do good work. But then when I realized that they choose you out of all of their suppliers worldwide, for Boeing's case, that's pretty spectacular when you look at the numbers, and mind-boggling. And you're up on stage receiving these awards, and you're with people from India and Italy and all over the world, and you're the only one from Alabama. And you're this little old housewife from Gunnersville, Alabama, and you're up there getting this wonderful award like this for this company you started. That's kind of a mark for success, because the people you hire get you up there on that stage. And so you're doing something right because of the people you're hiring are doing such good work. The customer gives you this fantastic award. And by the way, tonight, the reason I'm not in Washington, D.C., we just received Northrop Grumman Supplier of the Year. So I decided to be here instead.
Yes,
That's
impressive. You didn't want to pull out that blue dress again?
No, I didn't want to wear the Boeing blue dress again.
That's a different joke.
Success is measured in so many different ways, and as a small business, I think you just go home and you feel good about what you've done that day. I think you just know internal that you're successful, and you're still in business that day, so that's good. That's good.
That's wonderful. Now, we hear a lot about, government spending cutbacks, budget cutbacks, implications for NASA, uncertainty about NASA funding, implications for Army, uncertainty about Army funding. What do the threats look like that you face? Do you see any new opportunities on the horizon? But I'm thinking threats too. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, no question about it, it's a challenging environment. The thing that we've seen that's changed so much recently is a trend towards what's called LPTA, low price technically acceptable offers. And essentially what that means is if your proposal is acceptable, then whoever among the stack of acceptable offers has the lowest price wins. And when you talk about service contracts, there's only one place that you can really squeeze a lot of price, and that's in salaries. And when you start lowering salaries, you're going to lose good people. So it is a big threat, and I think, like everything else in life, there's a pendulum swing that's going to happen, and the government's going to realize, well, maybe we saved money on paper, but in the end we didn't quite get what we hoped we were going to get, and it'll probably swing back to where you won't see LPTA quite so often. That's certainly a threat. Budget cuts are a threat. We just don't know what may get cut next. So I think Chris's strategy of diversification is a good measure to protect yourself against that, and we feel like we've done the same thing. We don't want to over diversify, but being reliant on one thing is very risky in this particular fiscal environment that we're in here. Trying to think here. From our industry perspective, one thing that's been a threat for us that's probably unique to us is what I call the commercialization of the simulation industry. 20 years ago, you couldn't do what you can do today with commercial off-the-shelf technology. I mean, if you wanted to build something to provide training for someone, it was a custom solution, and it provided, it required big end hardware. But today, I mean, you got college students in their dorm writing stuff that you can use and essentially we're competing against, because there are so many tools out there, and everyone is so proficient at doing these things now that the industry has just changed dramatically. So we have to continue to evolve and try to figure out how do we remain competitive against this dramatically changing technological landscape. And I think we've done okay there, but it has definitely impacted us to a certain extent in that one area. From an opportunity perspective, I've always felt that if you're a good company, you're going to survive. I mean, the work's got to get done. There may be less work, but they're still going to have to get things done. And if you're a good company and you do good work and you provide value for the customer, and you can show how you can discriminate yourself from others, you're going to continue to get work. And I look at our company, this is our biggest growth year ever. And I think a lot of that is because we have been able to do that. We've kept our prices down. We've been very aggressive in pursuing new business, not to the point where we're bankrupting ourselves, but right at that right sweet spot, and providing good value. And I think if you can do that, you can still be successful, and the pool might be thinner in the future, so you'll be competing against less companies, ideally, as the pendulum swings back.
There could be a bright side.
Yeah, yeah.
And what about you?
You answered my question. But no, one thing I want to say about a small business is small businesses are in a unique situation, because where there's, what they say, you take lemons and you make lemonade. We decided that when there was sequestration and all the problems in the government, that we were not going to let that hinder us. We were going to actually turn that into an opportunity. And all the small businesses that were like, oh me, oh my, what do I do now? I'm like, get out of my way, because I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get everything I can, strategically go after stuff, of course, that what you can perform. But there is opportunity in chaos. And so we've just kind of decided that we were just going to go ahead and look at those opportunities as, wins. And we've been very successful at that. And another thing that we've done is gone after several prime contracts, which is where we're the prime and we're not underneath another company. So when they start cutting back, the people at the bottom get cut first, the subs. Now we are the ones at the top, and we have several large businesses that are under us. That's kind of a nice, empowering position to be in, because they're the big whatever, and you're this little company, and you know what? I might need to cut a person, and guess who's going to lose it? You are, not me, which is unheard of in this day and time, because the big companies always are the big gorilla. And so to have that little bit of power is kind of fun. And so anyway, we always see it like that. And diversification, like Mike said, is so critical in a small business. I mean, like be in business one day, the second day, start diversifying your company. Even if you have to sink a little extra money to go down that road, it's going to save you in the end.
Very good.
I got one more opportunity actually I didn't think of, and that is there's been a lot of focus over the last few years on small businesses and government organizations meeting their socioeconomic goals. What that means is most government organizations are mandated to meet woman-owned business goals, 8A goals, hub zone goals, service-disabled veteran-owned small business goals, minority-owned business goals. Those are all socioeconomic categories. And all government agencies, NASA, AMCOM, no matter who they are, they've got those goals, and they're being graded on how well they meet those goals. So they've always had the goals, but they didn't necessarily focus on them that much. Now they're being evaluated on those goals. So you're seeing a lot more effort go into trying to meet those standards, and they're not huge. I mean, you might see numbers like 4% or 3%, but if you look at the size of their budget and you take 3% of that as being set aside for this socioeconomic category, that's a lot. And there are not, in some cases, a lot of companies that can compete for that because they're either too big, too small, don't have the right capabilities. So it narrows that field and creates an opportunity for you as a small business if you meet the criteria.
That's great. That's great. Now, let's go with me up for a minute with this scenario. Let's say that you have decided that you want to sell your business, and someone has made you an offer, an attractive offer, and you've now stepped away from your current businesses, Victory and Pinnacle. Would you do it again? Would you start another business? If so, why? If not, why not? And would you do it differently if you did do it? What are your thoughts about that? Chris?
Well, that's a good question, because I started this business, I know you're not going to think I'm this old, but I'm really this old, when I was 50. And so after a while, you know, it's a pretty intense career path. Running your own business is a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of stress, and as you get older, it kind of takes, you know, wears you down a little bit. So I definitely would not do it again, but I would love to mentor people to do this, because there's a lot of lessons learned that I learned along the way. The first, I remember when we got this big chunk of money from the bank to start the business, the first thing I did was to buy a telephone system. And I thought, you know, I mean, I'm not very IT-ish, you know, I don't know, I mean, I can do the computer, but I'm not an IT person. So I thought you just plug the phones in the wall and you go at it and everything's fine. Well, $25,000 later, I had this closet full of all these wires, and I'm like, what in the world is this? So one thing I wouldn't do is go right out, and I would use one of those incubator, you know, facilities where everything's all inclusive for at least 3 years. Because if you don't, you're going to be paying for all of this overhead and all of this stuff that you don't really need, because there's some facilities out there that provide that at a minimal cost. Plus, you get like a free receptionist and all the phones, I mean, everything. I could have saved tons of money if I would have done that. At the time I started my business, Women's Business Center really wasn't up and going. So I, you know, was just kind of going by myself, and these people, you know, that were mentoring me, and they didn't really know much about that part of it either. But I would not do it again, but I would definitely be there to help other people that want to start their company, and let them know, you know, there's different ways to do it better that I have learned, more efficient.
But not ready to put in another decade of sleepless nights.
No, my husband's recently retired, and he wants to travel. He was an airline pilot, and he's been all over the world but never seen anything, only the airport. And he's, you know, keeps telling me that he really wants to do some traveling. So my company now is in a position that it kind of runs itself, and that's a really great place to be. When you're a 7-year-old company and you can walk away because the people that are running it can do it amazing job. I mean, they can run the everyday operations, they can run the books, you trust them, everybody's doing their job, you don't have to micromanage, and you can take off a month or two to travel and do the things you wanted to do. And so I'm in that really sweet spot right now, and it's a good place to be.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What about you, Mike? Are you ready to sell out and start over?
No.
No, it's right.
Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again, but it's been a lot of great work and a lot of great learning, and I don't want to sell. We didn't start it to sell, and although I've always said everything in this world is for sale, it depends on whatever the offer is, but that is not the plan. If it were to happen, I don't know what I would do if I didn't do it again. You know, because I like to stay busy. I'm a really bad golfer, so I'm not sure that would work.
Yes.
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah. Because in my mind, I'm still 30, but so who knows how long I'll still feel that way. Yeah.
Well, I do want to just ask one more question before we open it up for a few questions from the audience, and that is, if you had one piece of advice about starting and running your own business to give to the would-be entrepreneurs and the students and the other mentors and people in this audience, what would that be? Would you like to start, Mike?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is follow your passion. You know, don't do it for the money. Do it for whatever motivates you. If you remember when both of us explained why we did it, I don't think either one of us said we wanted to get rich. That's not why I did it. I did it because I wanted to bring the band back together. And whatever your passion is, that's what should motivate you. Not the thought that, hey, you know, I'm going to be independently wealthy, because a lot of people never are. And even if you are, I'm not sure that's necessarily a great reward. I think I feel a lot better knowing I created something that I set out to create, and the band is back together, and it sounds great, and I'm proud of that.
And Mike's right. Passion is a real strong motivator. It is for me, and I think that carries through when you meet with people and you meet with customers. They see you're sincere. You're not just after the dollar. I mean, this is not a get quick fast kind of business. You pay. Oh God, I hate to even tell you what it costs to start a company like this without a contract. It's unreal. But I think that if you're going to do something like this, my big motivator and the thing that kind of kept me focused was a business plan, because that's your passion and your ideas on paper where you can actually have a start to finish a diagram of how to get to where you want to go. Even if it's just 6 months, it's okay. At least you have it down on paper and you can kind of, be monitoring and then looking at where you're going. And it's like, if you don't have a plan, how do you know when you really get there? So that's why I think a business plan is so valuable. And if you go to a bank, if you don't have a business plan, they won't even look at you. So just know that. That's crucial.
Can I throw one more thing out there? You mentioned using an incubator. We actually did. It's now, I think it's Regis. It wasn't Regis at the time, but it's right across from Bridge Street. And it was just exactly as you described it. I mean, we walked in, all you had to do is plug your computer into the Ethernet port. I mean, everything else is there. The phone's there, the furniture's there, there's a receptionist, you got a conference room, mail room, copy machine, it's all there. And that is a very cost-effective way to get things off the ground. And we stayed there for probably a year until, as you get bigger, if you need 5 offices, it's no longer cost-effective. But when you're a 1-office, 2-office operation, it is absolutely the right way to go.
That's a great plug for the incubators in the community. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to take questions now, and I'll turn to sort of Violet Edwards as to how we're going to do that. Because I can't see you, and I don't think they can see you because it's so dark out there. I do want to apologize for that. I don't know if I said that earlier, but because the theater group had a big performance in here until just a couple of days ago, they haven't rewired things so that we can have light in here easily. Can you tell who is asking a question, or do we want to just turn the lights on?
I can't see either. I have a question, but I can't see what I wrote.
Okay. Just, maybe we just shout out a question, or just turn the house lights up. That's all I know to do, I guess.
Okay. I know it has something to do about when you all talked in detail about the selecting employees and management. I'm in Dr. Rhodes' class, and we had a big discussion about management and the type of people you want in your company. So if you could just describe the key characteristics that you look for. And in our discussion, we talked a lot about what's that like?
I remember can I fill it in for you, because I remember that conversation. It was whether you motivate an employee or the employee motivates themselves, basically.
And which one?
There we go. Thank you. Perfect.
What's that? Oh, I thought you were pointing at me. Now that I can see everybody.
She said, which one would you prefer in your company? I'm doing this because I can see better.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you're talking about motivation.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
key characteristics that you look for when you're looking for employees, because in that short interview that you described, you can't always, some people didn't put on a show just for the interview, but those key characteristics that you look for.
Well, as I mentioned, we have our values on paper. So we're trying to look at, does this person match up to our values? So I'll just hit a couple of them right off the top of our number one is deliver on time every time. So it's small things like, did they show up for the interview on time? I mean, obviously if they didn't come on time, then that's probably not a good idea no matter what you're applying for, but those kind of things. The personality profile will kind of expose some of those things. Is this person organized? If you're a technology company, which we see ourselves as, I mean, you can't have people who are totally disorganized and can't keep track of what their tasks are. So, you're looking for organization. Our Our number 2 bullet is exceed customer expectations. So you're trying to find out if, is this person someone who barely gets by and just does the minimum required, or are they a self-starter? Are they someone that's going to require constant oversight and supervision, which in some cases, and I got to back up a step, it really is going to depend on the position you're hiring for. I mean, in some cases, you may not want someone that is all that innovative and has a lot of initiative, because that may not be what that particular job calls for. But generally in our culture, we are looking for that. We're a small business, so we don't want to have to constantly tell people what to do every day. We want people that can kind of figure that out on their own, self-starters, if you will. I mentioned integrity earlier. So our 3rd value is open communication. So we try to expose work history where maybe there was something that doesn't necessarily sync with that particular value. And in the book that I mentioned earlier, one of the best techniques it talks about is letting them talk about their own work history and go back, and then they talk about red flags at the end that are things, if people say during an interview, at least from this guy's theory, those are red flags. I mean, if someone says, well, my boss was terrible, that's a red flag. I mean, you don't ever want to say that in an interview. You don't want to point the blame at someone else. I mean, you can say, whatever, I just didn't agree with the culture, or, I wasn't a right fit for the job. But if you start blaming everyone else in your work history, then that's going to be a red flag. Let me think, where else was I going with that? We're looking for people who have had good work experiences, because one of our values is safe and enjoyable work environment. So if you got someone that through the interview process says, I hated working there, I hated working there, I hated working there, and that's why they moved, well, that's probably not a great fit for your safe and enjoyable work environment, because this person apparently can't enjoy working no matter where they go. So I guess, does that answer the question? Does that make any sense to you?
Our big argument was about self-motivated versus the people that need to be motivated,
I guess I kind of answered that. I think it depends on the position. I mean, if I'm looking for a key manager, I want a self-motivator. I mean, I don't want somebody that you got to tell every day, hey, make sure you go sign the time cards, or, whatever. You want somebody who's coming up with ideas on their own that can help make the company better. But if you're trying to hire, what would be a good example? I don't know, you got a good example? Just someone that has a job to do that's very well defined. You may not want someone that is, constantly trying to go off and do things a different way.
I can give you a good example, and this is something you can relate to. So we had a position open for my assistant, and I'm CEO, right? So we looked at a stack of applications, and we ended up calling a girl that was working at Hooters. I know, you think, oh my God, but you know what? That was the best hire, because you know what? She always showed up for work. She was always pleasant. She was always well dressed. You didn't have to, she was a self-starter because she was a hustler. She had to make a living. Best employee. And so sometimes, you probably wouldn't, well, you might have hired her. But sometimes when you,
I'll just do the front end recruiting.
Yeah. But don't blush away from what that resume says, because that might be one of your better people. So don't be turned off because she was a Hooter girl, or she was at this or he was at that. Bring them in there and let them talk. Let them tell you who they are. And like you said, there are, certain jobs require certain things, but in this case, she was so organized. She just really knew her stuff. And so, good employee, but I say, and she presented herself nicely, and so just gave her, yeah, well, no, she was good. She earned that. She earned it.
But I think in the vast majority of cases, to give you a short answer, self-motivator. Vast majority of cases.
Confidence.
Okay, but I think the thing is, you don't always have the luxury of hiring exactly everyone, so you do have to be prepared to try to motivate people if they're not self-motivated. Any other questions? Yes, right down here in the front. Right down here in the, oh, okay, you've got one up there. Okay.
Yes, I have a question in regards to after you hire the person and you work for certain years. What are some processes that y'all have for conflict resolution or conflict management? Because sometimes you're going to have those strikes within your employees, whether it's internal or from an external point of view where they were mean to the customer or to your client and things like that. How do you deal with those different situations? And do you have to have like someone like a GC or a lawyer on hand when you're dealing with those different things, or do you have a process that is less complex?
Any thoughts?
Yeah, we just went through this, so I can talk about it. We do have a process in place. You know, we have processes in place for everything just about, and we have a process in place that if there's an action against a person that's done something that's not part, you know, that's a wrongful doing, we'll, depending on what it is, some things it's instant, no tolerance, you're out the door. Some things with a 30-day kind of, you know, what do they call that 30-day thing?
Probation?
Yeah, probation, thank you. Sorry, that slipped my mind. Probation.
Not because I've ever been on probation.
Yeah. So a probationary period, and you're monitored and you have goals, and the employer signs it, they sign it, so it's kind of an agreement. And if you violate any of that during those 30 days, as this person did, like in the second week, we had security meet them and they were gone that day. You have these processes in place to take care of these things, because the last thing you want, you have to, I mean, the customer that you work for, whomever it is, they know you're going to have problems with people, but they want to know how, more so they want to know how you're going to handle it and how you're going to fix it. And so we have processes in place to take care of that. And we did have to get a lawyer involved once because it was California. They like lawyers. But that turned out okay too. But you know, you just got to watch where you hire people. But different states have different, you know, right to work or union state. I mean, it's all kind of different. So when you get in this business, you got to get smart really quick about all that kind of stuff, and you better stay up on it because it could come back and bite.
Any other thoughts on that? Okay, next question.
Yes, part of my studies here are in game theory, actually, and I'm wondering, throughout the history of y'all's companies, if there is either a static strategy, a dynamic strategy, well, a mixed set of strategies, or an evolved strategy to carry out operations either on the administrative side or the commercial operations. I'm just wondering, like, how is it that you all were able to rise from just being yourself to now having the businesses that you all have? Like, I'm just wondering how that went.
Can you give an example of what you mean by those types that you're learning in your class?
As in, like, if there was just one way of doing things from the beginning and we just stayed with that way entirely, or we had a different set of strategies we pulled out and we said this is better for this time and that, or we had a fixed strategy and we just changed it slightly throughout time.
Yeah, the third one is probably the closest. I mean, you have to evolve. There's no way you can up front anticipate everything you're going to encounter, and I think you just have to make decisions as you go along and evolve the company as you face different challenges. I mean, who would have thought that some of the things that are in place today in the external environment would be there 6 years ago? I mean, you can't ever anticipate all that. But the thing that stays constant is those values. That is the one thing that doesn't change. So you change sort of how you do it, but you always return to those core values that help keep the ship on course.
Okay, one last question. If you were going up there for one, I think you were.
Yes, I was wondering, based on the culture that you all have in your workplace and, you know, trying to really find that right fit, how did you handle, or was there a time when you handled someone who didn't quite work out, and if you gave them that second chance, how did you go about doing that for people?
Well, we always give them a second chance. I mean, to me, it starts with their supervisor, their leader, their manager, whoever that is. I mean, they should be monitoring their work from day one. And if there's an issue, we will either try to give them training. If the training doesn't help, we put in place a formal corrective action plan, which you really have to do. I mean, you have to do that both to help the employee, but to protect yourself as a company. And that's given them a, no kidding, legitimate opportunity to turn their productivity around, either by giving them the skills they're lacking or whatever it is that they're missing to get the job done, or even reassigning them. If they're not working in that particular position and they can't be trained to do it the way it needs to be done, you could look at reassignment. I mean, it's a little bit difficult in a small business, but as you grow, you've got more opportunity to do that. So giving them every opportunity to succeed. And again, I think we share that culture. We care about our employees. It's sincere. I'll use it again, they're not minions. I mean, they're part of what makes us successful. So they've got to feel like they're valued, and if your employee X and employee Y gets walked out the door, employee X doesn't necessarily feel all that valued. So you've got to show, yeah, you're here for us, we're here for you, and we're going to do everything we can to make you successful. Then there are times when that just doesn't work. Sometimes people either can't do it, or they lack the capacity or the intellect to do what you need them to do, and normally if you've done everything you can to get them where they need to be and it still doesn't work, I think you part on good terms. I mean, they understand it just like you do. Hey, this is just not a fit for me, and we tried the best we can.
And also, you got to remember that when you do get rid of someone, it costs quite a bit of money. It's not they just walk out the door, but it costs you as a company a lot. So you really want to try to work with them, especially if they want to stay, to try to help them understand where they need to get stronger. And so we have training, and you have a lot of things, corrective action plans in place that they can see on paper exactly what they need to do to get better if they want to stay. And you really want them to stay, unless they're somebody you want to get rid of, and then you make it easy.
Okay, well, I certainly want to thank our panelists for your extraordinary contributions to the business community here in Huntsville, and I also want to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Present each of you a little memento.
Thank you.
For your time
Oh,
with
wow.
us.
Beautiful.
And I invite all of you to join us for a reception outside.
Very nice.
There
Thank you.
Go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was outstanding. I
Thanks.
appreciate it very much.